All right, so let's talk about how this started. You probably see the title, Game Changers Review. Basically going to give my opinion on the movie, but kind of just found out about it this week, and it's been exploding. I walked into a GNC in Orlando earlier this week and just stopped in to get a snack. I was trying to get some protein chips. I wanted to try them. And I walk in, and this guy's talking about the Game Changers, saying how he's about to turn vegan and all this stuff after he had just watched the movie. And I actually walked into the GMC with my buddy. My buddy was working behind the cashier, and I was visiting back in Orlando, so I hadn't seen him in a couple months. So I walked in on this, and I walked into this conversation. He was trying to convince my friend about switching to veganism. And me and him are both like trainers. We're kind of just looking at each other like this is crazy. But anyways, I got all the information from the guy. I ended up watching the movie. Checked out the movie. It's a Game Changers. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend. Honestly, the first movie I've watched in a super long time. I don't really watch movies like that. It's not really what I'm into. Like, I like researching this stuff or watching YouTube videos and following fitness, gym videos, stuff like that, and nutrition videos, which is kind of like why I kind of jumped on this movie as quick as I did, because I knew if I saw that already in GMC, it's probably going to send people either in the wrong direction or there was good advice in the movie. So I wanted to see what the movie had to offer, and then now I'm kind of going to give my opinion on what happened. Just a disclaimer, I don't really care what or how you eat. It's just about kind of putting out the right data out there, and I think this movie, in general, it kind of cherry picks data and is not really super credible, honestly. I think there's an agenda behind it, and so I don't think the movie is super creditable, in my honest opinion. I'm going to get into it, and I have a whole list of reasons. Overall, I thought it was a great movie. There is some good points in the movie. I thought there was a lot of interesting points in it, and I think if you're trying to become a vegan for the environment and are trying to be animal friendly, I think that's great, and I'm for you in that sense. But when you try and make it seem like it's better for performance and that athletes who are converting to this diet are outperforming other athletes, and I think at that point it's kind of like disingenuous to the public, because I don't think the data is really out there yet to really say that or even claim that right now. So basically the movie starts out with the main character, the protagonist. His name is James Wilkes. He's a UFC fighter, and he teaches military people how to fight and do mixed martial arts and things of that nature. He's very good at it. He's a really good main character, really seems like a good guy. And very well researched. He said he did over 1,000 hours in reading of this diet. Basically, he got injured and was trying to recover from his injury as fast as possible so he could get back to fighting, and that's when he discovered the diet. And throughout the movie, they go and they talk to a bunch of athletes who have then switched to the diet, which I'll get into. They talk to a few doctors, and they mention a bunch of studies. So here's where I kind of want to start off. So there are different levels to evidence in scientific literature, and different types of studies carry more weight than others because of the way they're designed. And some studies, such as a randomized control trial, will contain more evidence, or a review will contain more evidence than a simple observational study, which is basically like epidemiological studies. In this movie, most of the studies are epidemiological studies and they're observational studies, so they really don't have a lot of numbers behind them, or they're not reviews of multiple studies where they have a lot of backing behind it. So it's just kind of like they're going in, finding data in any study, even if it's just one study out there, and they're taking that data and putting it in the movie. And they did this over and over again. The studies weren't super strong. Honestly, I looked at them. Lane Norton made a video and he posted all the studies. I have them open here. I'm kind of looking at them as I talk through this just to make sure I'm hitting everything by detail, because I don't really want to miss anything. I want to give my opinion kind of, but like at the same time I want to have everything in front of me so I can tell you exactly what's going on here, so there's no kind of misinterpretation. But yeah, so they start the movie with actually a case article, and it's not even a study, but basically they start the movie talking about gladiators. And in this movie they go into gladiator diets, and they basically go to say that Basically, these gladiators had a diet that was pretty much plant-based. I mean, they almost stretch it along the lines like they're vegan, but they don't necessarily say that. And they say that they're basically plant-based, that they're eating a carb-heavy diet to survive in the arena. However, I think this is kind of interesting since they're not even vegan. I don't know why this was kind of made as the main point of the movie, but I think most people know that usually gladiators were, they're jail people. They weren't being fed grass-fed steak or any of that kind of stuff. Like, they're being fed foods that were cheap, easy to produce in quantity, and that would get them through the day for the least amount of price. So to go out there and say that, they're doing their performance because they're vegetarians is kind of disingenuous, to be honest. And even so, I don't think it's really even just good evidence. Like the article that they show here, I'm looking at it right now, is gladiator diets were carb heavy, fattening, and mostly vegetarian. It's literally just an article. So I don't understand how you can take any data from this. And they're saying that so this article kind of goes over a study, and basically in the study they took 68 skeletons and they did an isotopic analysis to see the skeletal remains, and basically they found that these gladiators were eating mostly diets rich in plants. But I mean, like I said before, this makes sense that since they're jail people, that they're being fed low quality food. So to go out there and stretch it that they're vegetarians is kind of out there. We don't really have all that much evidence to say that, but nonetheless, I just thought this was an interesting way to start the movie. So that already the data really kind of wasn't there. And I'm going to dive into the athletes, and they bring in a bunch of athletes, and yeah, they're elite level athletes, but they kind of stretch it out to be like they're the best in the world, and I don't think that's necessarily true. And pretty much all the medical personnel that they bring on this movie have some kind of affiliation with either vegetarian or vegan products, and I have it pulled up here. But yeah, that's basically kind of where I'm sitting with this. It's kind of interesting after watching this movie to see kind of what is behind all this when you actually look into it a little bit deeper. So the first kind of main topic with the athletes they bring up, I think the main kind of event here is they bring up Conor McGregor versus the Nate Diaz fight in 2016. They say Conor McGregor's, a big meat eater who was defeated by Nate Diaz, who was the plant eater, which is interesting that this is kind of one of the main sports events that they bring up in the movie, because they fail to mention that Conor in this fight actually jumped up 2 weight classes, and they didn't take into account that Nate Diaz is just a bigger guy in general. So like Conor was already jumping up 2 weight classes. They didn't take into account any of the training, what they were doing, their sleep, things like that. I mean, there's a lot of factors that kind of go into this, and you can't just say because a guy was eating plants that he won the fight. And he won the fight in a chokehold, but the thing here is that Conor McGregor was holding 2 titles at one point in different divisions. And at the same time, Conor McGregor is probably one of the best fighters in the world. And he's known to have a really rich diet that's filled with steak. And they have him saying it in the video that, yeah, he thinks that he lost the fight because he ate steak. But that kind of brings me into some of the stuff that I thought that was good, that they thought, like they really thought out and talked about in the video. They were basically saying that, so this is kind of what I got from it, but they're basically saying that carbohydrates are pretty much your only fuel source, which is not necessarily true, but I guess in terms of an event that's about to happen, it's kind of interesting about how you time your food if you're really trying to maximize your results. So carbs are not the only source of energy. There's mechanisms in your body like gluconeogenesis, and it doesn't just rely on carbohydrates. There are workarounds. So basically what happens when you eat a carb, it digests and it gets converted to glucose. However, other molecules such as proteins and fats can be converted to glucose in different ways. So they kind of neglect to say that. However, I do think it should be noted that if you're about to play, as someone who played tennis at a very high level, if you're about to play a sport or run tomorrow, you have your tournament or your event, it's probably not the best idea to go out there and eat a 10, 12-ounce steak that's going to be sitting in your stomach for the next 30 hours while you're going to do your event. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to do that. If you're going to eat some steaks, you want to do it while you're training or before the event. If you're really trying to maximize your performance during the event, then you really should be focusing on having as much carbs as you can leading up to that event the night before, the day before. You don't want to be slamming in a bunch of steak before the event because it's just going to slow you down, if that makes sense. And they go into it in the movie, and they basically have a study. Well, I say study because they only bring 3 people. And what they do is they have meals. One of them includes meat, and the other is vegetarian. And what they do is they look at the blood after the meal. So they take these kids, one day they give them a meat meal, the next day they give them a vegetarian meal, and they look at blood on both of the days. And the blood in the meat meals each time is a little bit cloudier, and basically it looks like thicker, and there's fats in it from the steak. But I mean, this is a process that we know about in physiology. So this is a common process known in physiology. Basically, the intestines release these fat molecules. So you eat a bunch of steak, your body needs to digest it. So what it turns it into is a chemical called a chylomicron. So it's just little fat globules that kind of move around through the blood. And what ends up happening is they move into the liver, and the liver, using bile, is what absorbs that fat. So that's what you're seeing in the blood. They try and argue that it's bad for endothelial function. So the endothelial function, meaning like your arteries, basically capillaries, things like that. That's basically what endothelial tissue is. So they go in to say that it's negatively influencing your endothelial function. However, they don't show any biomarkers for that. So they state it, but they don't show any studies that show the biomarkers being elevated or really show any data that leans towards that way. Now, if there was a study there, then sure. But the thing is, this is only an experiment that's done on 3 people. And they kind of do this a couple times in the video where they do these experiments on 3 people. But the thing is, like, you really don't know how true they are. And they could have done the experiment 5 times to get the result that they wanted. And this one just kind of makes sense, but I'm talking about the other studies. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. And like, it's pretty clear that they're pushing the agenda, but you really got to just take it with a grain of salt, because until you have randomized controlled trials or systematic reviews coming out saying this and that, saying that there are biomarkers being affected for endothelial tissue and that they're not in proper ranges, and that's when you have an issue. But as of right now, I think it's very early to say that, even though the movie does point. Another athlete they include in the movie is a strongman who goes by the name of Patrick Baboumian. I think I said that right. But honestly, crazy dude. They show his world record when he got it. So he walked 10 meters with 1,216 pounds on his back. They said he turned vegan, and that's what he says is kind of what helped him break this record, which props to the guy. Like, he's an incredible athlete. I mean, he would kill me. But they neglect to mention that Brian Shaw literally beat the record with 1,544 pounds and walked it for 16 feet. And if you go on YouTube, you can see his diet. There are videos of him showing how much he eats in a day, and he is a heavy meat eater. So, I mean, in terms of the athletes in this movie, I think they could have probably chosen better athletes, but there's not really a lot. I mean, it seems like most of your main athletes were all meat eaters, or what happens in the movie, the common trend is that they stop eating the junk food, they go vegan, and they have this kind of spike for a couple weeks, and maybe they'll beat the record, but they don't really equate to what they ate all the years leading up to that record. They kind of just assume that it was just a vegan diet, and it's very hard to assume that when you don't take into account training and other things of that nature that can really skew your results here. And genetics, things like that really play a role in things like this. So, all right, so we're back, take 2 here. I don't know if you can tell, but the flag is down. I'm starting to move out, but yeah, this video's taking me a long time. I've honestly really reviewed like so many videos now. I've driven back and forth from Atlanta to Orlando like 4 times, and throughout the process, I've literally listened to about every video on YouTube on this movie. So I've really spent a lot of time listening to videos. But the next topic I want to go on, the next athlete is Arnold Schwarzenegger. So in the movie, there's a section where they show Arnold, and he's like, yeah, I don't even eat meat anymore, that it's not even healthy for him, and he feels so much better without it. First off, I want to say that I'm disappointed in you, man. Like, I thought, you kind of sold out with this one. But anyways, I want to talk about who he is, because he was a Mr. Olympia many times, and he definitely ate meat, while he was winning those competitions, and he wasn't a vegan when he won those competitions. Secondly, Arnold has a supplement company that sells vegan protein. So he's selling vegan products. So I feel like there's a little bit of a bias here to push those products out. So overall, I was kind of really disappointed by that one, but you really can't take his word on anything, to be honest, because he's just a sellout. And I mean, when he won his competitions, there was a lot of other factors that were he was doing, like such as steroids and a bunch of other things and constant training. And it's hard to say that, like I said before, like the same thing with Conor McGregor. It's very hard to pinpoint it on one special thing that is the diet to their success, like leading to their success. So the next athlete I want to talk about is Novak Djokovic, who has affiliations with the movie. In the movie, they have like his name written. And if you don't know who he is, he was a former world #1 tennis player, and that's what I played. So I mean, I feel like I can talk about this. But yeah, Djokovic is a plant-based eater, and he actually has been dealing with injuries. So he was injured all throughout the season. He's had shoulder issues in the past, and even had to take some time from playing off in tennis. But like I said, like it's hard to say that he was the world #1 because of his diet. Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer are like pretty much his main competition. They're both arguably the best tennis players of all time, are both meat eaters. So with that being said, it's hard to like really say that, this is the pinpoint of his career. And if you do, then I could really just say it's the same thing about all these other athletes who get injured switching to the vegan diet. For example, Chris Paul, Ariane Foster, DeAndre Hopkins, Brian Orakpo, Jarrell Casey, Kyrie Irving, DeMarcus Cousins, the Porter brothers, and honestly, the list just goes on and on. Like, it seems to me like a lot of these athletes will turn vegan for a little bit. They'll have some kind of benefit if they were eating junk food before, and eventually most of them will get injured. From what I'm looking at here, from what I've seen, it's really early to really say that, this is why they're having the success that they're having when you don't take into account hard work, genetics, and other factors, since it is a multifactorial thing being an athlete. You can't just say that your diet is what turns you into a superstar. I can continue talking about the athletes forever, honestly. I can go on about all the different types of athletes that they go on to the movie, but I feel like it's getting a little bit repetitive at this point. So the next thing I kind of want to move on to is amino acids. So when you eat proteins, for example, like if you eat a steak, there is different amino acids. Each have kind of specific roles in the body, and there's a long list. If you take a biochemistry course, which is something I took in undergrad, you learn in detail what these amino acids are, and you learn how to draw them. But long story short, different foods have different amino acid profiles. So typically vegan food is not super rich in the amino acids that you want for building muscle. The amino acid that's involved in muscle protein synthesis, which is like where you start putting on muscle, you build muscle, is actually leucine. That's what is needed to trigger muscle protein synthesis. And it is not really profound in vegan diets or plant-based foods. So if you're trying to run the vegan diet, you really need to actually eat more protein, since you're not getting a sufficient amount of leucine if you want to hold on to your muscle. So like, since it's like a weak protein source, you really got to eat more so that you really hit those amino acid profiles that you want in order to sustain/build muscle. So there are essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids. Essential amino acids can't be made in the body, so you actually have to get them from your diet. So with that being said, it becomes a lot harder to get these essential amino acids when you're eating a vegan diet, since it's not really rich in these amino acids. So like as I previously stated, you really need to try and eat more protein if you're going to run this diet, so that you can make up for the lost amino acids. But so in the movie, they have an example. They take a peanut butter sandwich and they take 3 ounces of steak or 3 eggs, and they say they're roughly about the same protein content. However, the amino acid profiles are vastly different. And that's my first point. And secondly, A peanut butter sandwich, which is what they say in the video, usually yields you about 400 to 500 calories if you're using about 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. And 3 ounces of steak is only 3 ounces of ribeye, which is a super fatty steak, will give you about 185 calories. So, I mean, you guys can decide which is the better option. It's honestly kind of a toss-up, but obviously steak is lower calorie, and in the long run, you can eat a lot more steak than you could peanut butter sandwiches and have better results with that. So after watching this movie and seeing like all the different reviews by a bunch of doctors, like I watched all of the videos Lane Norton had on it. He has a PhD in nutrition. Watched all the videos Sean Baker had. He's a medical doctor. And watched a debate on Joe Rogan's podcast with the actor from the movie, James Wilkes. I mean, I seriously have watched countless videos. I think it's important if you're going to switch to and make the run for this diet that you at least go watch those videos. And I'll put the links to all of them in the description so you can really fully do your research. I think it's important that you really do your research and decide whether or not this is like the best thing for you. And like, I think it can be sustainable. I think it can be good. And I think it can be healthy for people. But I think if you're blindly making the jump, I don't know if that's really a good decision. And I think you should really take the time to do your research before you just blindly jump into this. And if you do jump into it, I think it's important to monitor your progress and see how you're actually responding to the diet. If you're doing better, then stick with it. And I think there are ways that you can approach this and have it be sustainable and you can have good results. It's just you have to really be careful. So if you decide that you want to do this, I recommend taking a few supplements since you won't be able to get them in your diet. I would do vitamin B12, vitamin D, omega-3s, iodine, iron, calcium, and zinc. All these supplements I think you should include if you're trying to be like, normal while you do this, because since you're cutting out all of the steak, you're not going to be getting these in your diet anymore. So like it's important to do the supplementation, especially if you're an athlete. And that's really kind of what I care about on this channel and on this page. Like if you're a normal person and like you're going to, fast food restaurants, eating Big Macs and eating hamburgers, I think the vegan diet will actually make you feel better in the long run. I think there is health benefits to it. The only thing I don't understand is why everyone needs to, push the extremes. I don't know. Nowadays you have the Sean Baker carnivore people who are just like only going to eat meat. They're going to eat no vegetables. Apparently vegetables aren't good for you with their diet. And I've tried it for a week. I don't think it's sustainable. I think it's really hard and complicated to just only eat meat. Like, why do you need to sacrifice everything else just to eat meat? It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And in that diet, there's not a lot of data out there either. He said that they're going to start doing a study, that they're working on getting grants for a study, and it's in the up and coming, but it hasn't started yet. And secondly, for the vegans, it's the opposite. Why do you need to cut out meat completely? Why can't you just have a really big plant-based diet, like majority plants with some meat? I mean, for me, and I think for most athletes, that's the best route to go because you're covering your amino acids, you're covering your protein, you don't have to eat as much calories because with veganism, usually the foods typically are higher calories. So you're going to have to eat more food, and it's just a winning situation to just include both in your diet. And you can always, if you have some vegan or vegetarian meals alongside, like I eat Morningstar veggie patties all the time, and I think it's important to include some of those options in your diet. But I don't think you need to go full send either way. I think it's important just to have a healthy, balanced diet overall, if you were just asking what I would recommend. Like I previously stated, like if you're doing it for the animals, then that's beautiful. Like you're a beautiful person, then stick with that because I can't do it. But I mean, if you can, really props to you. That's awesome and it's awesome for the environment. I think it's important to do that. And I really like how they kind of tied that into the movie and kind of brought that up. It really makes you think about the world and everything. And they do it in a way that's like entertaining as well. And it's just really well thought out. However, I think overall, I've really pushed this video longer than I wanted to do. And I probably could keep talking about it for another 30 to 40 minutes, but maybe we'll make a part 2. If this gets like 100 likes, let's see, I'll go vegan for a week like I did the carnivore. And right now I'm kind of interested in trying this out to see what happens, and I'll track everything, but we'll see how that goes. But if you really enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Drop your comments below. We'll keep talking about this in the comment section if you guys want to. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, thank you so much.